Welcome friends to another r/NuclearRevenge video. Today we've got some crazy stories of various kinds of relationships. But first, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below so you never miss any of my daily videos. That said, our first story of the day is exposing the real side of my foster mom. I exposed a recording of my foster mom throwing racial and colorist slurs at me at a tea party that she organized to get her club members to vote for her, and this is why. My foster mom is a very abusive and narcissistic woman, but she pretends to be the perfect and charitable woman around others, especially members of her ladies' club. I grew up in foster care, and while at first it was very rough, I eventually was settled into a home with a very kind woman. Sadly, when I was almost 16, my foster mom died. I was separated from my foster brother, and we went back into the system. Some months later, I was taken to this woman's house. My new foster mom was the exact opposite of my past foster mom. She was very mean-spirited, emotionally, and even financially abusive. My dead foster mom was almost like a real mom to me and my foster brother. She loved us and took very good care of us. She ensured we read books and was very concerned about our health, safety, and personal development. She didn't have a lot of money, but she did what she could and we were content. My new foster mom was more interested in making money off us and ensuring people thought of her as a good woman. I had never met anyone so obsessed with how she was perceived, and she did a good job fooling everyone because even I was fooled at first. I had thought she would be a richer version of my dead foster mom. Sadly, that was far from who she was. When I moved into her house, she already had 3 foster daughters living with her. 2 of the girls were biological sisters, and 1 was just some months older than me. She and I became friends, and she told me that our foster mom has a daughter who was in college, but her daughter had long cut her off completely. She said our foster mom was trying to make up for her daughter's absence and get people to look away from her and not question why her daughter and husband left her, and that informed her decision to be a foster parent. My foster mom hardly treated us like human beings or children. She treated us like we were props who were present to help enhance, beautify her life, and make her look good to others. Her club was women only, and it had prominent members of society. All the women were either rich, influential women who had their own money and businesses, or they were wives of men who were rich, influential, and powerful. The club had a foundation that catered to young adults who were less privileged, and the club prioritized colored young people. Naturally, every month, my foster mom received fat checks from the foundation so she could take care of her foster daughters. I first noticed my foster mom was strange when she tried hard to convince me to change my name. She started calling me by another name, pretending to have forgotten my name, and each time I corrected her, she would say, "Oh, sorry, but they sound so much alike. Why not just use that name? It's prettier." First of all, my name sounded nothing like what she called me. Secondly, I could never change my name. My name is the only thing I have left from my birth mother, and even if it wasn't, I've had my name for very long and it's become a huge part of my identity. There was simply no way I would change my name because she considered it not pretty. One day, she said my name was too ratchet, and it was then that I understood what her problem was. Well, I simply told her that I was never going to change my name. When she told her club's president that my birth mom and last foster mom died, the president felt sorry for me and said she would pay for me to see a renowned therapist. My foster mom had a problem with this, and I didn't understand why at first. She tried to get me out of it, but the president insisted, so she agreed. I had 2 sessions every week, and she would ask me after each one what I discussed with my therapist. When I told my foster sister, she shrugged and said my foster mom probably did not want me telling the therapist anything incriminating about her. Then it made sense. Apart from the fact that my foster mom didn't care what was going on in our lives, she only showed interest in us whenever social services were around or whenever they had a club meeting in her house. And they very often did because she was a good host. She would inspect our clothes and ensure we were wearing something very beautiful and decent so we could impress the ladies. While my foster mom was mean to us all, she had a special dislike for me, and I knew it had something to do with my very dark skin color. She would call me a horse for any little mistake I made. She hated it when I wore makeup, but she allowed my foster sister, who was just about the same age as I was, to wear lipstick. Also, whenever we got clothes, she would give the clothes to my foster sister because, according to her, I don't need brightly colored clothing. My foster mom's colorist insults were too much and were starting to take a dig at my self-esteem. But I didn't want to leave because it was exhausting having to do that. I was in 3 different homes before I was taken to my dead foster mom's house and had the best time of my life. I wasn't sure of what I would meet if I complained to child services and they took me away. What if I met someone even worse than my foster mom? I decided to tolerate her. I had just a little time before I would become an adult and leave her house anyway. My foster mom's abusive behavior only worsened with time. She would say things like we were lucky to have her and that we should thank God someone like her took us into her home. You should wake up every day and thank me for saving you, she would say. She was especially intolerant of me. She would yell at me, call me colorist slurs, say I was ungrateful, and when she was really mad, she would throw objects at me. Whenever she was about to host another of her club meetings or any of their events, or she knew child welfare was coming around, she would call us into her bedroom and apologize to us, asking us to forgive and pray for her. My foster sisters fell for it all the time, especially the younger girls, but I was not fooled. My dead foster mom gave me a lot of books, and I had read enough to know she was an abusive, self-absorbed person. I decided I had had enough of my foster mom when one day she broke my guitar. I had a special connection to my guitar because it was a gift from my dead foster mom. She knew I loved to play musical instruments and sing, so to encourage me, she had bought me an acoustic guitar. That day, I was in the room I shared with the youngest girl, tugging at the strings, when she barged in and started to yell about me playing the devil's music. Interestingly, I wasn't playing any particular song. I was simply playing around with my guitar strings, and I told her this. "Stop talking back at me, you ugly thing," she yelled. "Burn in hell," I screamed back at her, and she took my guitar and smashed it on the floor. She kept smashing it until it was just the head left in her hand. I cried so much that night that I didn't even eat dinner. My foster sisters were scared to even comfort me. Everyone walked on eggshells in the house for 2 days after. After church the next Sunday, the girls and I were eating lunch when she gave a big announcement. She was going to be contesting to be vice president of the club. It was a big deal, and she went on and on about what she stood to benefit from her winning. The other girls were somewhat happy about it, but I was not. I was disgusted that someone like her was working her way upwards, pretending to be an angel to the public while being a total witch to us at home. I started to plan my revenge. I knew it had to be perfect, and it had to involve her club, because I knew how important her club was to her. Her dream was to lead the club and be worshipped by the other members of the club, and I was determined to make sure that did not happen. I also knew I couldn't involve the other girls. They were too afraid of her to want to do anything about her terrible attitude. The girl my age had confided in me that she preferred it here because, in one home that she was in, her foster dad used to starve her. She didn't care that this woman was abusive because she had food to eat. There was no way the girls would back me up if I reported to anyone, so I had to do it alone. And if it was just me accusing her, no one would believe me. My foster mom cleaned her mess up nicely. No one would ever believe that she had a mean bone in her spirit, so I had to think of a way that would force people to see. I didn't want any plan that would backfire and have people think I was a bad person, or have her paint me as unruly before everyone. I reached out to my foster brother from my former home and told him all that's been going on. At first, he suggested I simply report it to the state and have them remove me from that environment, but even he knew how dangerous that could be. I would be taken back into the system, and that would be excruciating. It would be even more painful because she would go scot-free. The other girls would testify about her goodness, she would become the vice president of the club, and life would go on for her smoothly. Even if I were to be taken back into the system, I wanted the satisfaction of knowing that everyone knew that she was a very terrible person. My foster brother then suggested recording her whenever she had her frequent outbursts, and keeping it as some sort of evidence whenever I may need it. I thought that was a good idea, and I decided to do that. The next month, a boy that had been bullying me in school tried to bully me again, and in annoyance, I hit him with my lunch tray. My foster mom was invited to school and she made me apologize to my bully. I reluctantly apologized because the boy had it coming. When we got home, I tried to explain what had happened to her, but she blew me off. I was working on my computer later when she walked in and packed up my computer. I followed her, wondering what was going on. She said, "You are grounded indefinitely." I knew it was time to record, so I went back to my room, took out a very old phone that belonged to my dead foster mom, and went back after her. "Why are you always so mean to me?" I asked her. At this point, I'd started to record and was trying to get an incriminating response from her. She said, "Stop following me, you idiot. You should be grateful anyone in that school even notices you enough to bully you. Silly, ugly child." She went on, calling me ugly and talking about how I should be grateful to be around there. When the recording had gone on for too long, I returned to my room and shut the door. The next time the club ladies were in the house was for a tea party my foster mom organized. All the members were not in attendance, but many of the ladies were present. I knew my foster mom organized the party to win the ladies to her side before the election, and I was determined to ruin it. As we helped her get dressed, she handed me a flash drive to give to her nephew. He was coming around to help set up the speakers, and the drive contained a recorded speech. I felt like the luckiest girl alive. I asked my foster sister if I could borrow her computer, since mine had been seized, to transfer the file recording I had made on the old phone. I connected the phone and transferred the file into my flash drive. The plan was to give that to her nephew instead, so that instead of playing her speech, he would play the recording of her calling me names. Well, that did not work out because we were also involved in the preparations with my foster mom wanting everything to be perfect, so I gave him the flash drive containing her speech. I didn't remember this until it was about to play. After the speech, everyone clapped and praised her. The party was almost coming to a close when I rushed to her nephew and gave him my flash. I told him that she wanted him to play it as a sort of background music. When he played it, everyone was shocked to hear her voice screaming. At first, her nephew was too stunned to stop the recording, but eventually he did. The ladies present were not having it though. One of them pushed him aside and pressed on the play button. At the end of the day, everyone heard their dear sweet lady throw colorist slurs around, calling me a horse and telling me I should be grateful to even be able to go to school. Her reputation was ruined. She never got to be vice president, but she was able to tell just enough sob stories about what had happened to remain in the club. She also could not end my foster placement, despite knowing I was responsible for what had happened, because that was going to raise questions from the club members. My foster siblings were mad at me, but I didn't care. I continued to stand up to her till I had to leave her house, and I'm glad I did. Do you guys think for a person like this, ruining their reputation with everybody they personally know or care about, is that enough of a punishment? Or do they deserve more? Do they deserve to be locked up? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And our final story of the day is revenge on a problematic partner. I just finished reading a thread about crappy partners, and I think that this is the perfect time to talk about my own experience with a bad partner. So buckle up because it's quite a dramatic ride. I've always loved cars. I was born and programmed to love cars. My great-grandfather, grandfather, and father were all mechanics. And I, as well as both my sisters, inherited their technical know-how and an affinity for vehicles. We grew up in the outskirts of the city, so we were homeschooled, and one of our major lessons was how to be nifty with our hands. We learned to fix everything, from kitchen sinks to installing entire bathrooms from scratch. Whatever it was, we knew how to do it. Being Italian and growing up around 2 generations of elders meant that there was no sexism, and everyone could do everything by the age of 10. My great-grandpa had a garage, and he didn't like the kids to come in during work hours so that we didn't ruin things. I always snuck in under the pretext of dropping off lunch, sending messages from back home, or coming in to pick something up. I loved to watch the older men get down and dirty with the cars. And when they talked about cars and models, I understood what it was they were speaking of. On my 11th birthday, my great-grandfather gifted me an oversized pair of overalls, thick gloves, and a scarf, welcoming me to join the garage officially. I was super happy and went under their wing almost immediately. I started with bicycles and scooters, graduating with more complicated designs of bicycles, and then motorcycles. When I was able to get 100 bikes fixed with no further complaints, I was then allowed to start working on power bikes and cars. Though I could work very perfectly on newer models of cars, I found myself wanting to always be surrounded by the older, more vintage cars. Those kinds of cars only came by the garage once in a blue moon, but I made sure to be the one to attend to them when they did come in. It was an obsession. The way I used to drink in every bit of information that I could about these older cars. When I turned 16, I had to prepare for exams that would enable me to get into university, and I had to take a break from the garage. I passed my exams and went off to the university to study mechanical engineering because it seemed like the smart thing to do. Halfway through though, I had to switch because while I'd practiced a lot of things that I was being taught at great-grandpa's garage, the theoretical aspect was harder to grab. I changed my major to business admin so I could learn to monetize the skills I already had. In college, I made friends with a lot of my professors by helping to diagnose their cars and fix them up at first for free and then at discounted prices. During school events, I tried to be present at the car wash events, offering free car diagnostics. Before long, I became that car guy. It was a really good way to make some extra money and also get my name out there. One day after classes, a professor called me into his office and said that he had a friend who had gotten a car some years earlier, but hadn't driven it before due to a few issues here and there. He claimed that the friend had been given the advice to sell it, and he was just about to until he, my professor, asked him to try me. I agreed to check out the car, and my professor gave me a number and an address, which was a huge mansion, by the way. I went there, and to my greatest surprise, I was face to face with a limited edition vintage Ford car. I nearly pissed myself with excitement. After I finished freaking out and taking pictures of the car, I got to work on it. It needed a ton of elbow grease, some patience, and a good wash. Once I gave it all those three things, as well as nearly my entire day, the car started up again. I was even able to take it on a little test drive around the neighborhood. I got paid a lot for the job, and the car owner swore to recommend me to his other friends with exclusive cars. He meant every word and even made some calls right there. Over the next month, I was traveling to different parts of the city just to work on cars that cost more than all my years of tuition 4 times over. On occasion, I worked on power bikes as well. Apparently, a lot of rich people have those. I didn't officially get into car dealerships until one of the wealthiest people in the area died, and there was an estate sale at his mansion. I only found the place out on my way back from a job, and I went in. The garage had the most gorgeous selection of vintage cars that I couldn't afford. Even though they were heavily discounted, I knew that if I didn't get those cars, they would be taken to a junkyard and torn apart. Just thinking about what could have happened still sends a chill into my chest. I lived in a city where everyone wanted the newer, faster cars, so it wouldn't be hard to get anyone to buy them, or so I thought. Anyways, I made a few calls to the wealthy people who I'd fixed cars for and made up a business proposal for them on the spot. They trusted me, so they, 2 of them, were eager to support my business. By the end of the day, a towing company had removed the cars and taken them to a friend's place, all 7 of them. I lived in an apartment complex that barely had any space for cars. The very next day, I gathered everything I had left over from the car purchase, as well as my own savings, and I paid for a garage of my own and a couple of really expensive tools. I was in my final year of university at this time, so I took a short break to finish my finals and then get back to things. I fixed up all the cars and began advertising on social media by driving them around and taking videos of myself in them. I had no idea how to run a vintage car dealership business, and I'm sure that I got cheated out of money a lot during the first few months, but I learned super fast to put my money where my mouth was. In 1 year, I was a vintage car dealing wizard. I sold, leased, and rented out more cars than I could have ever dreamt of. I could even afford to keep one for myself. It was a 1963 Ferrari 250 GTO. It's one of the rarest Ferraris in existence, with only 36 in existence. It was a lucky, Lucky fine and so expensive, so I decided not to sell it. My work and financial life were going great. I had never felt the need for a relationship and kept it casual with nearly every girl until I met this one girl, Laura. A fake name. She was so intense from the start, which was very different from everything else I'd ever been involved in, and it was what attracted me to her in the first place. She was older than me by 2 years, but she didn't look it at all. I had to ask multiple times to make sure she was really above 21. We fooled around for a few weeks, and then she let me know that she liked me. I did think that she was a little forward and intense because I wasn't ready to be in a relationship, but it felt like she pushed me out of my comfort zone, and it felt refreshing at the time. Being in a relationship with her was like being on edge all the time. It kept me excited, and when I wasn't fixing cars or selling them, I was spending all my time with her. She was chaotic, wild, and unexpected, which kept me interested for a long time. Both my sisters were in committed relationships, one of them was even engaged, so it finally felt good to be a part of the people in relationships. Trust me, my family was even happier than I was. I should have realized the first red flag was when Laura was rude to my great-grandparents. At 92 and 96, they had a couple of memory loss issues, and when they accidentally called her a different name, she exploded, talked down on them, and stomped out. She also called my family weird. It caused a huge fight between us for a long time, and she nearly pinned the entire thing on me until miraculously things settled over and she agreed to have a do-over on dinner and apologize to my family. At this point, they already didn't like her, but for my sake, they went through it. After that incident, our relationship became rocky and things became weird between us. I tried to salvage it the best I could, but Laura seemed adamant about fighting with me. We didn't see each other for a while, and I focused back on work. 2 whole months passed without contact from Laura, and I thought that was it. Till she showed up at my doorstep in the lingerie and trench coat combo, apologizing later for her absence. I made peace with it, and we went on to be together for another few months. But then Laura had a problem with what I did for work. She called me a common mechanic and said that it was embarrassing for her friends, even though I probably made more money fixing one car than she and her friends made in an entire month. I let her know that there wasn't much I could do, as it was my way of life, and it was something I loved doing with my life. Sometimes I can't believe I actually tried to explain something like this to someone like her. At the time, I really did like Laura, so I did want to try everything to make her want to be proud of me. I got her gifts and took her everywhere she wanted, and I even paid for a few outings and trips for her and her friends. Still, she found a way to pick fights with me over everything. I was losing focus at work, losing sleep, and skipping meals because of how worried I was about making my girlfriend happy. During one of the few times we actually got along, she asked me to prove my love for her by letting her drive my Ferrari, my 1963 Ferrari 250 GTO. Now, I did love Laura at the time, but the car was worth a whopping $70 million, and the parts were a dime a dozen to find. Laura was a careless person, and she was even worse as a driver. She had wrecked my regular car so many times, I couldn't trust her around the china in my kitchen. Talk more about my most expensive car. I let her know that it was impossible because I hardly even drove the car myself. It was mostly for aesthetic purposes. I did tell her that if she really wanted to drive it, I would have to go with her so that I could make sure both she and the car were safe. Laura freaked out, calling me a selfish jerk, and left my house in the middle of the night, breaking up with me over text. It was impulsive, dramatic, and out of the blue. As usual, I tried to get her back to talk about things, but it didn't work. This time it seemed like she really did not want me anymore, so I took a hint and stayed away. A week passed after the breakup, and I went to see my family for emotional support. After I felt better, I came back home to see that my entire house was trashed, and my vintage Ferrari had scratches on it. A lot of scratches. My CCTV camera proved what I knew to be true, showing that Laura and her friends were responsible for it. I was so mad, but I still tried to reason. She was a complete witch about it, and so I decided that I would take the case to the police. Laura was arrested for breaking an entry and vandalism, and she got 500 hours of community service. I also got a restraining order against her, which she violated so many times and got put in jail for. I don't feel bad for calling the cops on Laura, especially after she was horrible to me and my family. It felt like I was killing two birds with one stone. Also, it was just nice to watch her attempt to get back together and go to jail for it. She violated the restraining order. Plus, the car scratches were something I could fix easily, but she needed to be taught a lesson. Now that I think about it, being with Laura was similar to dating a walking red flag after the first couple months. I just didn't notice. I haven't gotten into any relationships since, but at least now I know there's a difference between being wild and being freaking crazy. I'm just sat here wondering how much OP is made off of this rich dealership plan, because OP's just writing the story and casually drops that this car is worth how much? $70 million? How deep are OP's pockets? I really want to know. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another revenge story that was way crazier than any of the ones in this video, click on that left video. Or if you missed my latest video, check out the one on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.